And so we started looking at, hey, how do you get more sales for a small business? And if you look at the way most small businesses are found today, it's by a Google search. And on Google search, it's really the Google My Business listing and the review stacking, right? So Google My Business shows all the businesses and they stack them based on reviews and proximity. It worked. The only problem with reviews is when people have no reviews or bad reviews, they're excited about the reviews product. When you help them get to 4.9 stars and 500 reviews, they suddenly start to think, hey, I mean, I have 4.9 stars and 500 reviews. Do I really need this product anymore? So they start to think about canceling. So 3 or 4 months into the journey, they'll be like, well, I think I've got all the reviews that I need. I think I should cancel. And we would tell the businesses what we heard. Hey, it's not just enough to get reviews to a certain point and stop. Google checks to make sure that you continue to receive positive reviews before they put you at the top. You need to be responding to these reviews for it to matter.
Do you know someone who dropped out of college and raised $60 million? That is around 500 crores. Also, a perfect example of how to grow a company with referrals and word of mouth alone. Today, we are talking to Varun, co-founder and CTO of GoHighLevel, a SaaS platform for sales and marketing for small and medium businesses. See, he bootstrapped his company for many years and eventually raised a 60 million Series A. This is one of the most brilliant discussions that I have ever had on building a company and a product that his users love. Watch till the end. But also one last bit, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to GoVenture channel at this point. Hey Varun, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Pritesh. Thanks for having me. I think the audience for your podcast and the way you're doing it is interesting and different. So I'm excited to be on here.
So Varun, I think I want to start from the start of your journey, which is you dropped out of college after 3 years, spending 3 years in college. Right? What triggered you, man?
I would say it was a trigger. So people learn differently. Some people learn just theoretically in a classroom setting. Some people learn by actually doing stuff, and not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but doing it towards an outcome. Like the goal that you want to get to, you don't know how you're going to get there, but by uh, trial and error, by building something, you really learn. And I was one of those people where I learned by actually doing, by actually building, and just learning for the sake of learning without an actual outcome to learn towards just didn't work for me. So that's really when that realization hit, I decided, well, it's time to start doing then, because
Mhm.
there's no point sitting in the classroom. So that really is what got me started.
Got it, got it. And what pursuits did you have during your colleges that you thought, okay, you should get into, you should quit college, get into software engineering and all that?
I mean, all through school, I was really bad at most subjects. I'm lucky that way. I was really, really bad at most subjects, and it couldn't hold my interest at all. The subjects that I naturally just did well with was English and computer science. And with computer science, maybe it was just an early fascination because my parents got me a computer when I was really young, like 3, 4 years old. And I had no idea what to do with that computer because in those days it wasn't like an iPad or Mac OS or Windows where it just came and you could just explore and touch around and stuff worked. It just sat on the MS DOS prompt. So unless you actually knew what you were doing, there was nothing that you could do. And I remember on DD or some channel, there was some computer program where someone was teaching people DOS, and there was, CLS to clear screen and DIR to list the directory or something. And I tried those commands on the computer and it worked. But outside of doing those two things, I would switch on the computer, try those two commands, switch it off because there was nothing else to do. And one of my cousins, I think, when he came from somewhere abroad, got Windows 3.11 on a bunch of floppy disks. And back then, to install an OS, there was 10 floppy disks or 15 floppy disks that you had to put in and install. And he installed Windows 3.11 on the computer, but the computer didn't have a mouse because that was still new then. So again, I would turn on the computer, it would load Windows, but I couldn't click on anything. I couldn't do anything. There were some things you could do with keyboard shortcuts, and I explored before I got a mouse. So there was a long period where I could do nothing functional with it, but just that machine was really exciting, even to just turn it on and play with it. So I've always had that fascination with computers. And during school, I was not good at maths, not good at physics, not good at chemistry. Since leaving school, I've developed interest in some of those subjects like physics, but back then I didn't have any interest. So I was good at English, I loved reading, and I was good at computer science. That was it. When they taught us C, C++ in ninth or 10th in school, I remember it was almost no effort for me. Like they would teach it to me in class, and I would show up for the test. I had to do no preparation. I just logically somehow got it. So in that way, I was lucky that I was so bad at everything else, and I could clearly see what I was good at. That there was no questions. I knew that I was somehow going to be doing something with tech. I just didn't know what or how, but I knew I was in tech.
Got it. And that's a crazy story, man. I think very few people have seen the computers of the early days, and very few people are able to realize their own passion about what they're gonna do, maybe at such an early age. But
Yeah,
but coming back to high level a bit, you're bootstrapping Go High Level for several years before raising $60 million, $60 million in Series A funding, right? Not a very common story again. Uh, why did you bootstrap for so long, and why did you decide to, when did you decide to raise capital?
so all through the journey, I think that was a core focus of ours. It took a long time before we started making money. It took about 4 years in our journey before we actually started making money. And the reason it took 4 years was because we were always looking for a model where we were building a sustainable business from day one. So, about 1 or 2 years in, with some of the iterations and products that we had built, it was possible for us to go out and try to look for an investor and funding and build up a sales team and really look at the LTV to CAC and start playing that game. But
Mhm.
one realization that dawned early on us was if it was about raising money, then you're always in that competition. um, Whoever raises the most money wins. If your competitor raises more money than you're in a race, you're worried you have to raise even more. If you're going through
Mhm.
lean periods, which is happening right now, a lot of companies are facing difficulties, then you're suddenly having to invent or come up with a business model on the spot. And if you
Mhm.
don't, you need to lay off a bunch of employees. We just didn't want to be in that game. So, which is why we were looking for a model where we could be bootstrapped from day one. So, until we started making money, we hired no people. Our
Mhm.
Google Cloud costs were minute, almost insignificant. Our own lifestyles were as lean as possible. And like I um uh, hinted at, like our wives supported us through the entire process. So we did not carry any debt. We were not spending money that we didn't have. We weren't hiring people we couldn't pay for. So we stayed as lean as possible for as long as possible. We hired our first engineer once we had some revenue coming in the door,
Mhm.
and even that engineer we hired off Upwork, because we did not want to hire a full-time person, and if that revenue didn't come in next month, have to fire that person. We wanted to make sure that if we stopped getting paid, the person on the other side had the same relationship. They were a contractor working for us, and we could cut them off as effortlessly. So we were
Mhm.
really careful about that. And then once we had even more money, we started to hire and build a small team. It was easy to stay bootstrapped when we were smaller. So 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, we were still bootstrapped. But I think the problem you run into is if you're storing 200 people's years worth of paycheck in the bank and you're refusing to touch it, that's a lot of money that you're not putting to work.
Mhm.
And eventually, some of our metrics, I wouldn't say started suffering, but could have been much better if we had invested that money. For example, we did not have a customer success team, onboarding team, trial experience team, none of these type of things. So if someone signed up, they had to fend for themselves. So one example that I use internally is we built an amazing resort on an island, but the only way to get to the resort is know that it exists on the other side and jump in and swim, because there were no
Mhm.
roads there, no one was telling you about it, no one was taking you to the entrance. So if someone somehow miraculously just jumped in and swam and came out the other side, they were a customer. But if they drowned along the way, we lost them. And we lost, about 40-50% of the people that jumped. So one of the things was, hey, we should invest more in those teams, but that meant spending more money. And we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't be in a position where we hire that team. Maybe it takes 6 months to tweak the team and get them performing right, but we didn't have to lose people if our revenue didn't match up or didn't continue to grow at the same pace that it was. And lucky for us, none of those have come true. We've never needed the
Mhm.
money. We continue to grow at such a rapid pace that we've been outpacing what exists, and even the money that we got just sits in the bank till today. But we
Mhm.
wanted that safety net, because if we're really going to continue to double down, we didn't want to be in a position where we had to send people home because we had a bad month. So the safety net was really why we did it.
So and once you started raising funds, you started scaling up, right? You started building different teams. How did that journey look like? Was that a very challenging piece?
It was, because with a lot of these, both Sean and me, when we first started, were engineers. And for us, every problem is a product problem. So
Mhm.
product and engineering, we understand easily, and we can solve for easily. Luckily, along the way, so through this entire journey, I mean, like I said, we went through a lot of trial and error, and we'll probably go over that in more detail later. But we met our third co-founder through that journey, and
Mhm.
lucky for us, he was more operation focused, and was used to running account management teams and success teams, ran his own agency in the past. So I think just bringing him onto the team helped us uh, do those better. But if it was just the both of us, we would have really suffered on that.
I think why I was asking this that I think whenever I have raised capital personally, uh, I've seen that fear in myself that I don't want to throw away that money. I don't know how to spend it. Basically, whenever you raise capital, you have a plan, but you don't have a plan on how to spend it, how to utilize it to execute that plan, right? You know that you want these end goals, right? And you raise a lot of capital. You're bootstrapped. You raised $60 million. Was that a genuine problem for you? Was that fear there that, oh God, let's not spend it away. Let's not get reckless here.
So for us, the goal was to never touch the money at all. So that piece was slightly different in terms of how we approached it. So the money that we raised still sits in the bank, and we haven't touched any of it. But something that we do put emphasis on is to continue to stay profitable, is to never touch that money. Because really, the reason we got it was, hey, it's rainy day funds. So let's make sure that we don't get to rainy days. We look at our margins really carefully. We make sure that we have an healthy EBITDA and other things. So we really put a lot of emphasis on continuing to stay profitable. But what we've done, because those funds exist, is we've uh, gotten comfortable going closer to I mean, making our margins smaller, because we know that we don't have to continue to add to the bank account at the same rate, because we have those rainy day funds. So in case growth does slow down for a month or two, or even 6 months, we're figuring something out, the rainy day funds exist, but we continue to make sure that we're always profitable.
Got it. Got it. And I want to come back a little and you talked about your bootstrapping journey. Just before getting into the podcast, we were discussing about you moving to Qatar, right? You're based out of Qatar, you're not. And also you mentioned your wife's supporting you, right? What's the story behind it? How did you move to Qatar?
And I think that is probably a good time to talk about how me and my co-founder met as well, because all of these
Mhm.
really play together.
Mhm.
So when I jumped in and started at my first job, one of the first tasks I got handed was to build a phone system. So at the company, they did a lot of calls, answering service. It was an answering service company. So they did a lot of calls. And one of the projects they wanted to run down was, hey, can we build our own phone system?
Mhm.
And I was the new guy on the team, and they were like, well, I mean, what do we have to lose? So let's just task the new guy with the impossible challenge. And I started building the phone system. And for people who are familiar with PBXs, this is asterisk, free switch. And when we started building these, initially it was, hey, could we get a call to work? Could we get the call quality to be good? But as things started working, can we build an interface on top of this? Can we make this interface more robust? Can we sell this as its own product? So the vision just kept growing. And 2 years into the job, and this is my first job, I had a team of about 15 people that were reporting
Mhm.
into me, and we had this huge function built. And
And
that was a
this was
huge disappointment.
immediately after you dropping out of college, right? This was immediately after you dropping out of
Yeah,
college. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I didn't like it, because early on in your career, you feel like your whole purpose in life and your goal is to be a good engineer, and
Mhm.
you're going on that journey, you are becoming a better engineer, you're enjoying the challenges, the reward, I mean, the payoff when you actually accomplish something after a few weeks of struggle is incredible. So all of those highs, you're just enjoying that. And suddenly when you have a team, you're responsible for other people and you're young. I mean, I mean 22, 23, and you're responsible for 10, 15 other people. And I didn't like it because it felt like, hey, I'm now doing everyone's work, I'm helping every person, and as an engineer I'm not improving my own ability. So I still did that for about 5 years because the product we were building was interesting, it was continuing to grow, there were a lot of technical challenges. But at some point I decided, hey, this is enough, like I need to now focus on becoming a better engineer, I don't want to manage other people. So I quit and I moved to a telephony company in Bangalore, purely focused on building phone systems. And one of the criteria for me was, where can I find the best engineers possible, where I feel uh, a lot of competition, I feel like I'm not good enough to even be at this place, so I can really learn and become a much better engineer. But the minute I made that switch and got there, the biggest realization for me was, I hate this. Because suddenly I was just being told what to do. I didn't have a vision to go after. I wasn't involved in the decision making. That's when I realized that I want to do something more entrepreneurial. Like, I don't just want to be told what to do. I don't just want to be a better engineer. Sure, the engineering is exciting, but I want to control my destiny. I want to be able to build a team. I want to be able to be a part of that vision, be able to dictate that vision. And I think that realization really led me again to quit that other job. And when I quit, like most people do, I decided, I mean, when you look for a co-founder, who's the best co-founder that you'll find? It'll be someone in your family and most likely your brother or sister. So that's what I did. Me and my brother started a company together. And the vision there was, hey, can we help people who want to play sport, find a place to play, find a person to play with, and do this efficiently? The idea seemed cool to us at the point, but there was a lot of gaps that we didn't immediately see. We only spent about 2 or 3 months on it before we realized, hey, even if we really built this to its full vision, there aren't enough places in India, enough facilities for people to even play at, and enough people going and playing, that there's no way for us to really scale or build a company here. And one of the problems we thought of tackling was, hey, let's actually build the infrastructure, because there aren't enough places for people to play. Maybe we can solve that problem.
At this
It
point,
was a more capital intensive problem. Yeah.
Varun, I believe you are competing with PlayO, right? And did PlayO exist back then?
Play was perfect. Yeah, they did, but they were just starting at that point.
Mhm, mhm,
So I think they were a year or so in the market. They was they were out there, but they were still young, and that's why we were looking at all of these competitors. I think there was a couple of others which were purely listing service providers, where they would list out all the facilities. They didn't do bookings or anything else yet. And we looked at multiple angles. We looked at, hey, could we build the software for these centers to run themselves and charge them a subscription, but make the user
mhm,
side of it free? Should we charge a booking fee for the booking itself? And no matter which way we looked at it, there was a business there. There just wasn't a business at scale. Like, we didn't
mhm,
see how we would get millions of users and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. That just didn't exist. And
mhm,
again, somehow just building a viable, instead of trying to shoot for the stars, building a viable business somehow just appealed to us back then as well. And we were like, well, let's just build the facilities themselves. And we started, and today it's grown to a lot. Like, my brother still runs that business, and
mhm,
he's got 5 or 6 facilities. Some of them have 5 badminton courts, a couple of basketball courts, 3 futsal pitches, gyms, a bunch of these. But the minute we started building the first one or two of those, I knew that this isn't where my heart was. I had to be in tech. And through
mhm,
this entire journey, at my first job when I started, that's where I met my co-founder Sean, and both of us worked together on that same product. When I left, 3 or 4 months after I left, Sean left as well. He went and started his own tech company, a company called Invoice Sherpa, which was an invoice receivable product.
mhm,
It was an add-on in the QuickBooks apps marketplace. He was the single owner operator. He was the developer. He was the support person. He was the designer. He was everything by himself. And he was going through that same journey and he was like, hey, I've had enough. Like on one side customers are hitting me up with 100 tickets a day, on the other side I need to make progress on engineering. And he was really going through that struggle and he was ready to sell that company. So he was like, I just want to sell and start over, start with something different. So he was reaching out at the same time that I was going through this journey trying to build all this sporting app. And I kept telling him, no, I'm not interested, I'm doing something else, I'm busy. But eventually when that realization happened that I want to be in tech, and I don't want to continue to set up all of this infrastructure, that's when I was like, okay, Sean, tell me what your idea is and let's start. And that first app that we started building together was Invoice Sherpa. So the space that both of us were really familiar with was the SMB space.
Mhm.
We were like, hey, what does every small business need? They need to collect payments, so they need to send invoices. So we decided, hey, let's build an app where we allow small businesses to send invoices. And whenever they receive a payment, if they get paid using a credit card, we'll eat into that surcharge. And that's really how we will build the business. Because the goal for us over there wasn't, hey, on step one, let's find a way to build $1 billion business. It was step one, let's make sure we build a viable business where both of us don't have to work forever.
Mhm.
And it was really just being able to pay two people's salary.
Mhm.
And when we started, the app went well. I mean, we got great reviews for the app. It was 4.8 stars. People were installing it. But the only problem was small businesses did not want to use credit cards. And there were multiple reasons. They didn't like the chargeback risk because as a
Mhm.
plumber, you go to someone's house, you finish a job, you go back, and if that person charges that back the next day, what are you going to do? You have to fight that charge back, and that means that money isn't in your bank account. There's also a holding period where, because of the chargeback risk, the minute you get charged, this is different in India, but in the US, UK,
Mhm.
other countries, the banks actually hold the funds. The minute the charge happens, it doesn't just land in your bank account. The bank holds the funds for 7 days, 14 days before they give it back to you in case
Mhm.
there are chargebacks. And small businesses don't like that because they want the money the next day. They need to use that money to buy food, they need that money to buy parts for the next job, whatever it is. So that whole idea did not work out. And when that didn't work, we were like, and it was an app, so we were like, well, if they're not going to be using credit cards, let's charge them for the app. And that just fell flat because no one wants to pay for an app. Everyone wants the app to be free.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we tried to charge $7 for the app, and that's when we were like, well, maybe we need to charge more because it looks like this isn't going to sell itself. And the minute you charge people something, you need to put a person in front of them, whether it's a support person or a salesperson. Someone needs to talk to them. It doesn't happen like magic. So if you need to put someone in front of them and it's not an app that automatically scales, you cannot charge them $7. So how much can do we have to charge them for that to work? And over there, the bare minimum was 100. You need to be charging them at least $100 a month before you can put a person in front of them. And
Mhm.
if we had to charge them 100 a month, then the app can't just do invoicing. What does it have to do? It has to, we looked at other competitors. Since it was SMB, you can think plumber, electrician, it needs to do job dispatching, managing team members, appointment scheduling. So like, let's build all of that. And then we built all of that. And that's when we ran into the sales problem, where most of these people, like whether it's a plumber, electrician, whatever it is, weren't online looking for ways to improve their business. They were out doing the job that they're doing. And we had to cold call them during the middle of their day and somehow convince them that the app could do better. And even then, the proposition was it's going to help streamline your operations, maybe help save 20-30% of your costs. And that just wasn't good enough. Like most people wouldn't jump at it. And even if they did, there was some other platform that they've already heard of. But when we asked a lot of these small businesses, hey, what is the problem that you would like solved? There was one thing that everyone always came back with is more sales. They didn't care about the optimizations. They didn't care that it makes their life easier, better. They just wanted more sales. And this is something that a saying that one of the mantras you can say that we built the company on. It's sell them what they want and give them what they need. No matter how important you think a product is for a particular business and how it's going to make their lives better, if they don't believe it, there's no point trying to convince them about it because you're on a failed mission. They need to somehow realize it themselves before, when they see the problem, then they'll look for a solution. But if they don't see that problem and you're trying to convince them that a problem exists, that's a much taller hill to climb.
Mm.
So we were like, well, if what the small businesses want is more sales, let's focus on getting them more sales. And
I
that's
think
really how we landed on high level as a platform.
I think that's a basic 101 of startup. I think talk to your customers, build what they want, right? Rather than building in the dark and building what you think the customers want. I think that's a brilliant way how you got to uh, the product that you have today through multiple iterations, I believe.
Yeah, it took a
Uh,
lot of effort. And I think that's why,
yeah,
I'll go
please.
for it.
No, please go ahead.
I said that's how we got to where we are, where people just wanted more sales. And so we started looking at, hey, how do you get more sales for a small business? And if you look at the way most small businesses are found today, it's by a Google search. And on Google
Mhm.
search, it's really the Google My Business listing and the review stacking, right? So Google My Business shows all the businesses and they stack them based on reviews and proximity. And that's how most businesses get found today, because it's plumber near me, dentist near me, tire shop near me, whatever it is. So we were like, well, that's the product we'll build. We'll build a reviews product. And that
Mhm.
really was the first version of high level, a reviews product.
And what happened to that? What happened to that?
It worked. The only problem with reviews is when people have no reviews or bad reviews, they're excited about a reviews product. When you help them get to 4.9 stars and 500 reviews, they suddenly start to think, hey, I mean, I have 4.9 stars and 500 reviews. Do I really need this product anymore? So they start to think about canceling. So 3 or 4 months into the journey, they'll be like, well, I think I've got all the reviews that I need. I think I should cancel. And I mean, there is some of this you don't really know. We hear about this ourselves. Like Google automatically checks for the recency of the reviews, whether you respond to reviews, and all of those type of things matter. And we would tell the businesses what we heard. Hey, it's not just enough to get reviews to a certain point and stop. Google checks to make sure that you continue to receive positive reviews before they put you at the top. You need to be responding to these reviews for it to matter. But again, this is us trying to convince the customer of a problem,
Mhm. Mhm.
because in their minds the problem is solved, but we're trying
So
to tell
yeah.
them no, there is a problem that still exists, but it's not good enough. So that's where we're like, well, we have to do more for them. So what more can we do? And that's where we're like, well, two-way texting, like let's own the front door of a business. Because if we
Mhm.
own the front door and all communication, new leads, everything is flowing into them through our platform, then they can't ditch our platform. So then we started to work on owning the front door. So all communication channels, whether it's SMS, Facebook Messenger, Instagram DMs, Google My Business messaging, WhatsApp, whatever those channels are, let's own all of them. And how does the business get found? So out of the GMB profile, you can have a website or a funnel, you have chat widgets, review widgets. Let's own all of those pieces. And then the business needs to be listed not just on Google, but on all citation services. So let's
Mhm.
own that. So we just kept building to own more and more of the front door. And the natural
Mhm.
progression, once you own the front door, it's okay, cool. All of this data is now coming in. They're running ads, the leads are coming in, people are visiting the website, filling it up. But the small business still never gets back. I mean, today that isn't the case, but 10 years back, if you went on a small business's website and you saw a form and filled it up, the expectation was you would not hear back at all. It's like shouting into a void. You know that there's no point filling that form up, but you still fill it up and no one will ever reach out.
Mhm.
And that is the problem with most small businesses. They fill up something on the website, an email goes to the business owner, just gets lost in their box. They're never going to reach out, or the receptionist or whoever it is. So the next
Mhm.
step is then nurture. How do you start automatically talking to these leads that are coming in? And we started building automations. When we started, AI wasn't where it is today, but we started
Mhm.
building automations where they could build flows based off the different channels, what words are contained in the text. We had intent detection. There were products like Dialogflow and others which allowed you to detect intent. So we would see, hey, what is the intent of the customer coming in? Are they looking to book an appointment? Is it an FAQ? We would do all of these to try to automatically engage the lead and get them into a conversation, because for most small businesses, any conversation or any lead that comes in, the goal is to get them into an appointment. So our idea was get them booked for an appointment and have them show up at the door of the business. Then it was, well,
Mhm.
we've got them to the door of the business, let's help them with the close. So we built the full-fledged CRM pipeline tools to figure out, how many of those deals they were closing. So we just kept following that customer and building and building and building. And by the end of it, we had everything. We had social media posting. We have communities now, which is like a private Facebook group that you can run for your businesses. We have online courses. So there's a lot of memberships. I mean, through COVID, a lot of even actual small businesses switch to content and memberships. But post that, a lot of them are sticking with it. A lot of course creators, content creators
Hmm.
continue to use the platform. So membership. So there's almost nothing in the small business stack that we don't have today.
Hmm. And if I were to ask you how many small and medium businesses, how many SMBs do you have in a platform? A rough number, maybe.
So as of December of last year, it's about 500,000 SMBs on the platform.
Hmm.
Most of them are in the US. About
Hmm.
70-80% of them are in the US.
Hmm.
And we've seen this in other ways. So when we first started, we really had to cry for help with some of these bigger platforms, like with Meta, to get into the WhatsApp API, or with Google or ads, or to get any help from some of the bigger platforms. We really had a struggle. But over time, as that SMB count has gone up, the number of Facebook accounts that's connected to our platform, the number of Facebook lead ads that actually funnel the ads then into our platform, all of those numbers have gone up significantly because of the volume of SMBs in the platform, that they have now started reaching out to us saying, "Hey, it looks like a ton of small businesses actually, when they run ads, send the leads to your platform. Is there anything that we can help you with?" Which is the power of having, such a large group of small businesses come and work with you. So that's definitely been a big change.
I think uh, uh, I think I was hearing your journey, you going through multiple iterations, multiple smaller pivots. I think, and it reminds me of a discussion that I was having with a family fund here out of India, large family fund out of India actually. And this guy, he tells me that, and this is coming from a family fund, right? I was surprised. He tells me that almost all startups go through pivots, right? And this is coming from family funds are typically very conservative in nature and all of that, right? They say that we are ready to put our bets on startups that bets on the founders that are going to give it all and everything, because we realize that startups will inevitably go through pivots. Now, some of these pivots are sometimes large, where you do a hard pivot, you change your space and everything, and some of these pivots are minor iterations, like you had to go through
Yeah.
at GoHighLevel, right? But that's a crazy story. I think I want to I want to understand when and how do you think you knew that now you have got PMF with GoHighLevel? Was there a defining moment that you said, okay, now we have the product that we need?
Yeah. So even through this journey, right, I was telling you, and I think we stopped at the right point. So when we had gotten to the reviews product, we still knew that we hadn't reached that point, because
Mhm.
we were able to sell a product, but we knew 3 months down the line the product wasn't helpful for the person. The sale itself was still hard because we still had to talk to a small business owner and try to sell them the product. And it was at this point in our journey that one of the people that we had sold this reviews product to had a digital marketing agency that they were working with. And they said, "You guys need to talk to my digital marketing agency because
Mhm.
they help me with all my tech."
Mhm.
And I remember at that time, we thought it was a stupid idea. We're like, "Hey, why are we talking to a digital marketing agency? They're not our customer. It has nothing to do with us." But we still jumped on the call. And the interesting thing was, the digital marketing agency understood everything. We didn't have to explain anything about our product. They
Mhm.
understood every aspect of our product. They came up with 4 or 5 nice suggestions. And the other thing was, he's like, "Hey, if you can make these 2 or 3 improvements, I will buy this product for 10 of my customers." And we're like, "Well, that's crazy." Like, he just wants to buy it for all 10 of his customers. But we're like, okay, cool. I mean, the effort involved was little. And I mean, by now we were 3.5, 4 years into trying to build something. So we were up for anything. So we made those changes, and he bought it for all 10 of his customers. And then he said, "Hey, I know 10 other digital marketing agencies at least, and I'm sure this would be useful for all of them for their customers. Do you mind if I bring them in?" We're like, "What? Okay, tell your friends, bring those customers in." And he told his friends, they bought customers in. And at this point, from having, you know, 30 or 40 customers, suddenly we had hundreds of customers.
Mhm.
And we were like, this is crazy, like, what's happening over here, like, what are we missing? And the funny thing is, one of those people said, hey, I'm running a class where I'm teaching, it's called a mastermind in the agency space, where I'm
Mhm.
teaching 40 other digital marketing agencies how to do a better job for their customers. Do you guys want to come and speak for 30 minutes about your software there? Said, cool, we'll do it. So we went to the event and spoke over there, and all 40 digital marketing agencies, they bought the product for their customers. And that's when we really realized what we were onto. And I mean, today looking back, that's when we really realized what we were onto. But back then, it was still interesting. Hey, this is crazy, what's happening over here? And more people came and more agencies came, and they kept referring themselves. And so there was no acquisition cost, we weren't selling them. All of these were warm leads that were coming in because they were already sold on the platform before we had to do any selling. They just came in and they got it, and it was really crazy. But what we've since realized is a lot of the technology choices that SMBs make are made by these digital marketing agencies and other people that help them with tech, MSPs, people who are helping them with setting up the desk phones at their office, setting up the computers for them, or helping them with their marketing. These are the people that really help the small business with these choices, because the small business owner doesn't know. They're like, I want a website, I want more people to walk in the door, I want an email newsletter to be sent. Like, most small business owners are informed enough to know that they need to be on social media, they need to be sending emails, but how many of them know to actually go do it themselves? Not a lot. So they want someone who will solve that problem, and most of the time it's a digital marketing agency that gets pulled in, and they then make the recommendation of the platform. They say, hey, I can definitely do the newsletters for you, I can do the social media posts for you, but guess what, you need to purchase these two platforms and give me access so I can do it for
Mhm.
you on your behalf. And
Mm.
that's really how the SMB market works, and that's really what we unlock. So the digital marketing agency is the key. They are the people making the recommendation to these small businesses to first go and buy these platforms. And even once those platforms are bought, they are the people who are then using those platforms on behalf of the small business, because the small business themselves would not be able to leverage it that
Mm.
well. And I think once that realization hit, we really just doubled down. We stopped selling to SMBs directly altogether, and we said we
Mhm.
only sell to agencies. And the nice thing there was, even from a support perspective, we had to support the agency in case there was a problem, but this was a more educated customer, this was a more technical customer, and they were then able to support the SMB not just with the software but with the outcome. Because when the SMB says send a newsletter, as a software platform we cannot build actual newsletters for them, but the digital
Mm.
marketing agency can. So it solved everyone's problems, and that's really when we knew that we got that fit, and we really started growing from there.
And what year are we talking about? When did this transition from,
So this
say,
was 2019. So this was 2019 January when things started really moving. And I mean, I remember that really well because 2018, me and my wife was pregnant and we were expecting a child, and
Mhm.
uh, our first son was born January of 2019, and it was a scary time because we just had a child. I'm still not making any money, I haven't made money for 4 years, my wife supporting all of us. So it was a scary time. And that's exactly when that first event happened. I mean, December of that year, 2018, was when we started working with Robin
Mhm.
and the agency. Jan 2019 was when we actually went to the event and sold the 40 agencies, and things really started moving from there.
So your kid brought you a lot of good luck.
That's the Indian way to. That's the Indian way to
The
do it.
classic Indian way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I remember Varun in one of our earlier discussions. We were talking about, so on the last few days we were talking about, say, the skateboard model of building products, right? You had discussed about it. Can you go a little deeper? I could clearly see there are a lot of stuff around that model that you have been using. Can you go a little bit more deeper on that?
I mean, there's a really famous graphic for this, where if you just Google skateboard model, you will see it.
Mhm.
But the idea here is, let's say the problem you're trying to solve is transportation. If you just go out and say to your customer, "Hey, I'm looking to solve the transportation problem for you. What do you need?" you'll suddenly get so many different inputs, everything from their daily commute to the store down the road to office to their traveling out of town. The weather conditions are changing, they have to visit new countries once or twice a year, and you'll have no idea what problem you're solving. Do I build a cycle? Do I build a plane? Do I build a car? Should it have a roof? What weather conditions? Like, there's just so much. And the idea here is to break the problem down into the smallest possible solution, where if the problem we're solving is transportation, what is the smallest transportation problem that we can solve? Hey, let's solve the commute to their friend's house or to the store down the road. And the idea is just build a skateboard where they can jump on it and they can push themselves to distances close by. Sure, if the weather's not right, they can't use it. If the distance goes slightly longer, they can't use it. But it might be just enough to get to the place down the road, get to a metro station near you, and then hop on a train and just do that. And the nice thing there is it's really, really quick. You can build that skateboard very quickly and put it in the hands of your customer. And then see, okay, now I've enabled you to travel short distances faster. Now, what problem do you have? And then you can build a cycle, and then you can build a motorcycle, and then you can build a car, and you can keep building with them. But if you start building a car from day one, you're going to really shut yourself off from your customer, because you're going to talk to them, gather as many requirements as possible, shut yourself off, and you're building this car for 2 years. And during those 2 years, your customer has changed, market conditions have changed, everything's changed. By the time you come out with the car, your customer is going to say, hey, but the steering's on the other side, I wanted it on this side, the color's wrong, I wanted the back seat to have a little more space, can it fit a car? There's just going to be so much feedback that you're hit with, that there's no way that you can be blind for that long and get it right. So the idea here is put out the smallest possible version as quickly as possible, and then continue to iterate with your customer and build in public. So you're constantly getting feedback, you're making incremental improvements, but it's fast. You're not waiting 1 month for that improvement to come. Every week there is a new release going out, every week there is an improvement that's happening, and your customers need to be convinced of it as well. Because, and we had this challenge with our customer, when you put the smallest possible version out, they're like, hey man, these guys are jokers, they have no idea what it is that they're doing. Because I asked them for a blog platform, and they've given me an ability to publish one post at a time, and it has a link, and there'll be all of that type of friction. But your customer needs to understand, you explain what the model is to them. Hey, the whole idea is we want to build this with you. But they will be convinced only if they see the pace at which you're pushing out. They need to see improvement every week, they need to see constant change. And that's something that we push our team really hard on. Every week something needs to keep releasing, every week there needs to be improvement happening. When we first released, our platform had a lot of bugs because it was two engineers that was building a really wide platform. But anytime a customer reported a bug, we would jump on call with the customer. We would share the screen, look at the logs with the customer on the call, find the line where we identified the problem in the logs, go back to the code, fix the bug, deploy, have them refresh the page and confirm that the bug was fixed. And just that experience saved us so many customers, because they're like, these people really care, they're jumping on with us. And the fact that they were on that interactive journey with us meant that they saw that we were pulling all the stops to make sure that our customers were taken care of. And I think it's that type of mindset, to build in public, to release fast, to make sure that your customers see that change is constantly happening. Those are important to the skateboard model, because if the customer doesn't believe all of these other things, they're going to think you're a joke, because they're like, hey, these guys are nowhere close to what I want, so I'm going to ditch them.
Mm. I think the skateboard model, it reminds me of how China became one of the largest mobile manufacturing industries in the world, right? They started with building cables. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of. They started with building cables, and then they graduated into building USBs, right? And they, in fact, that was the story how they killed one of the largest computer hardware manufacturing companies in India, which was Motherware back then, around 5, 10, 10, 15 years back. Motherware was a large company. They started building, but China started building and shipping these USBs to India, dumping them, killed Motherware, and then eventually graduated into building mobile phones and became the largest mobile phone manufacturing countries in the world. It's a brilliant analogy, I'll say. I think very relevant for every startup ecosystem, at least, if not for large companies, build in public and
Yeah.
use the skateboard model, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and this isn't just for product. So that's the
mhm,
interesting thing, right? So we've applied this model across the company. So at that first event that I told you about, where we sold the first 40 agencies, we didn't have, we had a really nice design website, but we didn't have a sales page or anything on it. So on the flight over to the event, Robin, who was the agency partner we met, was like, "Hey, you guys need a funnel page to actually make sales." So he built a funnel for us, which is like a single page lander to sell the product at the event. But the reality is, when someone signed up on that page, what do you think happened? Nothing. They
mhm,
just signed up and the data got added to a Google sheet. But what I was doing is, as data got added to that sheet in real time, because the pitch was happening at the event in real time, I was adding the user entries into the database. So the accounts actually got created and they would be able to then log in and access the account. So the fact that they signed up didn't even create the account. And these are a lot of the things that people try to over engineer. They're like,
mhm,
hey, everything needs to work seamlessly on day one, and they sign up and this automatically happens. And we apply this to like a support process, success, whatever the teams are. Like, it does not have to be end to end thought out and fully operationalized and automated, and all work like magic from day one. It's just making sure that the customer sees that you care, you get in front of them as fast as possible, and you help solve their problem no matter what. And all of these efficiencies can come up over time, so don't focus on all of that too much. And we apply that same skateboard thought process to all teams, not just product.
I think back at Y Combinator, we were in Y Combinator a couple of years back, and they used to have a saying which said, build things that don't scale, right? You don't have to start building everything that scales on day one, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I think uh, I wanted to discuss about, say, how you apply this model at Go High Level, but I believe we have already had a brief on that. Would you want to, let's say, talk about some of these processes happening in your sales team, in your customer support team, how you're applying this model, this whole skateboard model across different teams?
So, I mean, lucky for us, we don't have sales.
Uh-huh,
And until a year or so back, we didn't have marketing as well. But
uh-huh,
today, we have some people in marketing, mostly doing ads, some retargeting, some outreach, but not many. But with other teams like success and support. So, one of the main philosophies is, like I said, we want to get in front of customers as soon as possible. And one thing we had there is, hey, if a customer wants to talk to us, how do we create an experience like a store? Like a customer, let's say you have a problem with your mobile phone carrier. You walk into an Airtel store, Vodafone store, whatever it is. Someone's there to greet you. You get a ticket. You sit in line. Somebody, and then you go in front of someone and you talk to them. So how do we create a similar experience where it's not just chat, it's not just they create a ticket and someone will get to it later, but how do we get a person in front? And that has multiple advantages. One is, if you go on a ticket, there's a lot of back and forth. Hey, I have a problem. Cool. Can you tell me what your account is? Cool. They tell us the account. In that account, which area do you have a problem in? And can you shoot a loop? And there's just so much back and forth that happens, which would consume 2 3 days before everyone really even understands what the issue is. But if two people were on a call, you can get to that same point in 5 minutes or less, where you can just quickly get these details and you're like, well, I see the problem. Let me get it to the team. So how do we make sure that we have that level of experience with support? And one of the ideas that we came up with was, let's do a live Zoom room. It's always on. Any customer that
mhm,
wants to jump on
mhm,
jumps in there. We create tons of breakout rooms, 30, 40 breakout rooms. And there's a pool of support reps sitting in one room. There's customers
mhm,
that come into the main room, someone who greets them, distributes them across rooms. And you get the overall idea, like similar type of experience to in store. And we got there, but there are challenges. At some point, so many customers jump in
mhm,
that you're not able to handle the load. And how most people, like, when you go to the store, the reason you're patient is because you see your number and you know when you're going to be attended to.
mhm,
So you can see the numbers count down and your turn is coming, versus if you're just sitting there and you're like, I have no idea who's going in front of me, who's going after me, what the order is. It starts to create some frustration. So we had to build something around this. And then first thing that most people do is, come on, let's over engineer this. And they would start looking at the Zoom APIs, and they will start creating ticket numbers and actually doing some product and engineering work there. But instead, what we did was we just put a form in front before they could get the link to jump into the Zoom call. When they filled up the form, we would add them to a Google Sheet.
Mhm.
And in the Google Sheet, you know who was before you and after you. When they came into the Zoom room, the main waiting room, the screen was just shared to that Google Sheet, so they could see their order in the queue. And it's really coming up with these type of quick solutions that can just help you solve it instead of over
Mhm.
engineering.
I think I'm gonna use that. I think I'm going to use that at our own company. That's a brilliant, brilliant way to solve for your customer expectations, I will say. Who came up with that hack, by the way?
Yeah. So again, our team is large enough that I won't be able to pinpoint. But if I had to guess, it had something to do with Robin, our third co-founder and the person who was running the agency. But it was him or someone on his team.
That's a brilliant hack, I will say. I think I want to come back to the probably a little bit on the tech side of things, Varun. You have been CTO at a SaaS company. What are some of the most memorable or challenging technical hurdles that you have faced in the last few years?
I think memorable, there's a lot, but I think just that feeling. So we were building for a lot of time before we ever hired a team, about 3 or 4 years. And even once we hired a team, we were going slow because we were going off revenue and stuff. And it's that feeling. So, when you're driving a cycle as a kid, first the wheels go off, and then when you start driving, I mean, the balance wheels go off. And then when you start driving the cycle, eventually you learn to take your hands off. And then you're like, wow, look at that. I'm actually doing it. I'm driving the cycle without holding anything. And that feeling was really great, because the first time the team actually was driving by themselves, they built a feature from the ground up, which was a website or funnel builder. Drag and drop, you build a funnel or website inside the platform, and the team built it without any involvement from me. I didn't do a code review, I didn't look at a database schema, and the team just delivered all of it themselves. It was that same feeling of, oh wow, look, no hands, like it just magically happens. I think that was really rewarding to see the team both be able to do that and surpass you in abilities as well. So in individual areas, there's a lot of people on my team who I can go to and sit down and have conversations with, and they're much more informed and can have really cool conversations with me. And that's really fun to know that you have built a team and a culture where there's so many smart people in the room and they're able to get to these outcomes. I think that's really rewarding and fun.
Got it, got it. And what would you say, Varun, or say some of the so there's been a lot of hype around AI, ChatGPT, and all of that. Do you see any emerging trends around that in your own space?
I mean, for us, AI isn't a premium or a niche product anymore. It's become table
Mhm.
stakes. So every product in the market has an AI website builder or funnel builder, has AI automation builder, AI blog will be written along with images, or an AI email builder, conversational AI bot. And it's not one or two products that have it, everyone has it. It's become table stakes now. So we do a lot of those same things, and it's really great for the SMB, because if you think about even the example I told you of someone filling up a form and no one attending to it, it's because the receptionist or the person at that business, if it's a dentist's office, the dentist is busy in someone's mouth, or the receptionist is busy greeting people walking in the door, getting them what they need, getting them to fill up intake forms, whatever that work is. So the fact that there is a bot that can sit behind, if you think about a dentist office, most times most people will call or text in, and we're moving people away from calls, because more people prefer to text. A lot of small businesses are still on calls. We're text enabling them, whether it's actual SMS, Google My Business messaging, Instagram, Facebook. We try to move them over to text. And once you move them over to text, the questions are the same. Hey, do you have parking? Where is your address? Can I bring my kids to the appointment? Do you accept this insurance provider? So all of these are questions that can be answered by AI. There's no reason an actual human has to sit down and answer these. These are just FAQs. So a lot of that ability comes in. And even when they want to post to social media, all businesses know that they have to post. How many of them can actually come up with content? A few agencies do take that over, but the reality is AI can do this better. And I mean, in one
Mhm.
way, it's content that's written by bots, seen by bots. No one really cares, and no one will actually read it. But but again, sell them what they want. The business believes that they need to post, they have to post. So you need to make sure that that post gets written no matter what. So a lot of these things AI has really started to do a good job with, and it is table stakes. So we have all of these features, just like every other platform. But I think overall it is interesting. I think from a productivity standpoint, it is a huge boost. There are even people within the team, product dev, who've asked, hey, where do we all think that this is all going to go? I think my general thought process there is it's all for good and it is a productivity gain. But what's going to happen is programmers or product managers aren't going to lose their jobs. It's just that more software is going to get written because writing software gets cheaper. Every engineer is
Mm.
able to now do more, which means the cost of producing software is lesser. So more customized software can be written. Previously, you pick a big CRM or a database or whatever it is, or you pick a company like Oracle or Salesforce, and then no matter what the business is, a consultant comes in and helps bridge the gap between the two. Hey, you
Mhm.
need to change your process so you can put it into Salesforce like this, or try to adapt Salesforce to then fit some of what the business is process. But guess what? Maybe something completely custom can be written for them because the time and the cost that it takes to write that software is just much less. So I think overall, because of the cost of software going down, more software will just get written. But in the wide world, what impact is it going to have? That's a tough one. That's
Yeah.
anyone's call. It definitely is going to change things, but how far? I mean, this is where I like to use a Warren Buffett quote. I don't know if it was Warren or Charlie. No one can see the future, but you just need to make sure that you have a margin of safety and you're prepared for anything that comes.
Yeah, yeah, be prepared for it. Yeah, I think historically also technology has always created more jobs than it has taken away. That's the history of technology, at least. And
Yeah.
I also believe that the whole trend that we are seeing of these whole LLM models and AI taking over, that will end up creating. Obviously, it will end up changing the landscape, but it will eventually end up creating more jobs than it will take away. Now, if you enjoyed this, it would mean a lot if you'll subscribe and share your thoughts, reviews, and the guests you want. दोबारा मिलते हैं next discussion में.